Hi guys, my name is James Gillett, and today I want to do a video just showing you some of the things that I've learned along my own journey on how to transform your life. If there's any, I hope I can provide some value today, and hopefully do some good in the world with it. Alright, so I guess, for me, I'll talk a little bit about my own personal story, and then hopefully there's some things in there that might come through to you. So my moment happened for me was when I was in prison. That was, I had this moment where I knew I wasn't going to come back. It wasn't like I was still the person who I'd become in the whole process. And it was very difficult. The most difficult thing about turning your life around is at the very start. Hands down, like even across the board anywhere. For the environment, it's like, when I made that choice to turn my life around, no one believed me when I said I was going to do it. And by rights too, because I'd failed so many times. I'd let my family down. As soon as I'd get out, I'd go on a crime spree or whatever, and then within a few months I'd be back in prison, and that whole process was just, destroying my soul. For me, the change happened when I went last in Casuarina, and I viewed the place from a completely different lens. When I first went in, I was 18, so I used to look up at guys and go, shit, yeah, that's what I want to be, thinking that was the way to do it, like, that was what I was trying to aim for, the gangster life. So when I turned it around, no one believed in me. I mean, like, I could tell my friends and stuff, but no one, it's something that has to happen internally. There's the former UN Secretary General, a guy called Dag Hammarsley. He has a quote that's really good, which is that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you. It's the only thing that matters is what you think of yourself. So anyway, so the first thing I want to talk about is obviously environment. For me, like, I did so much education when I was in Casuarina. Like, halfway through my sentence, I had this moment of hope when I saw my best mate was out working. But the main thing that really worked was that I started to read books in the library. I went to the self-development section. The first book I read was a book called How to Be an Optimist by Lucy McDonald. And that book just blew my mind, because I didn't realise that everyone in prison basically had this whole pessimistic mindset. You could tell them whatever it was, and they'd always be, but that, you tell them you want to go get a job, they'll be like, you won't get a job, you've got a criminal record, you won't be able to get anywhere in life. There was always this negative sort of, pessimistic view on the world. And I read this book, and it talked about how it's a choice. How you view things is a choice, and that really blew my mind, because as soon as I started to understand what everyone's thinking was, it helped me switch myself out of that way of thinking. But it's a process, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, and it's why I've decided this is why I realize this is my life's purpose. When people try and fix, I've done this map, I made up a little map of the collective unconscious, but there's many ways. It's very hard to describe this, let alone draw it, but basically when people are in this sort of the fear levels and the survival states, people that are in prison all in this red section. Most people in society are all in the green, so they sort of fit in between here. This is the vast majority of the population, and then you got a small select few that have gone past there. So when people are in this at the bottom levels of the when they're at the bottom, when they're at the rock bottom, they view things completely different to how people do up around here. So this is why people have a lot of difficulties trying to help people turn their lives around, because when you're, and I used to be right down here, I used to be right at the bottom, and when you're at that spot, you're looking for constant reasons why everything won't work for you, so everything you see, and every time you fail, you try something new, it fails, and it tells you, looking at that as evidence that, okay, then I'm not worth something, or this is, it's viewed completely different to what people are who view it at the top. So when people fail up here, they look at it as, okay, this is something I can learn from, and they don't internalize it. It's not a part of their self-worth. because they already know what their self-worth is. Because your self-worth isn't something that can be given to you. No one can give it to you. It's something that you already have within inside of you. It's just about trying to discover that, and you'll get that through some of the tips that I'm going to teach you today. So how do you improve yourself? There's a few things. So what are you trying to improve? Like, how do you feel better? How do you get up? Just to make it simple, you've got 3 areas that you can improve on at any time: your mind, your body, and your soul. So your mind is educating yourself, reading books. The reason I educated myself, it's not because I wanted to. I used it as a way to deal with pain. So if something happened to me, I would, if I had a relationship breakdown, I'd read 7 books on relationships because I needed to understand what was happening, because it wasn't from me lack of not trying to make it work. With my body, same thing. I've been really overweight before, and I know how that makes me feel. So usually when you're feeling really bad or you're not really happy with your situation, it's, you need to either sharpen your mind, your body, and your soul. And people, like, when it comes to your soul, it's like spiritual stuff. So people go, well, what's spirituality? Spirituality is uplifting the vibration in other people, and a lot of people don't understand that. So it's why people can go into recovery and they can never touch, people that were hopelessly addicted to stuff could never touch anything for the rest of their lives, because of the fact that they spend a lot of time working on their soul. Oops, microphone. So that's one thing to know is, like, with fear, like, a lot of people don't understand fear, so fear dictates their life. Most of society, to be honest, lives in fear. Everyone's always scared about what someone thinks of them, or, they've got the fear of being, saying something different from the crowd or coming out with a different perspective. And that's, and that's what happens when society gets soft, like, people are too scared to say what they actually think and how they think things should be done. And the reason being is, if you look at the collective unconscious, I've done a line to help divide the midsection that breaks from fear into love. Pride is what stops people from breaking into this area here. So I'll use addiction because most people know someone is caught in addiction. Every person could be pointing at that person, hey, you've got an issue, but they won't, it takes courage to break out of this area here. And with fear, it's like people, people think, oh, when they're angry and pissed off, I'm, that gives me power, I can get what I want. Yeah, but maybe to people that are below you, but it doesn't work going up this way. If anything, it's a win-lose or lose-win. That's that whole mentality. Like, prison's like that, it's either someone wins, someone loses, or someone wins. In this area, it's always win-win, so even with my business, I'm happy to be transparent with how to do all these sorts of things, because I'm in the business of transforming lives. And when you're in the business of transforming lives, unlike the other businesses that are in the community sector, that's all everyone's trying to get a slice of the pie, their way works best, all the rest of it. And they're not interested in, collaborating on ideas. That's because their intention is to try and get as much resources. And it's not coming from a bad place. It's because they want to have something for themselves, because they believe their idea is best. With win-win thinking, it's like, well, I hope someone rips off my ideas. I hope, because I'm in the business of transforming lives. If someone figures out a better way to do it, then that's great. Because that's like, well, by all means, it's like, that's win for me, it's win for society, it's win for everyone. So that's a lot of the differences. So when people are in survival, this is one other thing I want to say for people to understand. When people are really caught up in addiction, when people are in a really rock bottom place, people are in prison, everything is about yourself. And people go, they're being selfish and stuff. It's like, imagine if you're a really good host. You're the person who, people come around, you always, really, make everyone coffee, make dinner, you're a really good host for everyone. Now, in if you are on fire, are you going to be concerned about anyone else? You're only going to be concerned about putting yourself out, and that's what survival's like. And to break free of that, and people who are really content and happy with life are people that, give back. And I used to see that. Why do people do volunteering? I was like, well, why the hell would you be doing that if you're not getting paid? It's because I'm thinking about it with that mentality from down here compared to what it's like when you actually realise what service is about. And vice versa. it works both ways as well. You got people up here trying to solve things down here, not understanding how it works. Okay. So another thing I want to talk about was mentors. So, actually with the environment, before I move on to mentors, with the environment, you know, like I don't care what anyone says, like every person I know, especially from Armidale, who's turned it around, if you want to transform your life, you got to get out of that area, you know, or whatever area that it may be where all the suffering is. You know, you have to get yourself to a point where you can safely be able to establish boundaries with people before you can actually go and try and help. So this is what does a lot of people, is that they get caught back into, you know, like they feel like they're obliged, you know, like especially a lot of guys, you know, like might get out of prison, like I'm not going back, that's it, I'm done, you know, and the next thing you know, a few of the boys want to call up, let's catch up, let's do this, you know, and they feel that like obligation. It's like you don't have any obligation to anyone, you know what I mean? If you know, the best thing I did when I got out of Casuarina was move out of Armidale, you know, because of the fact that if I hadn't, I would have eventually, because I hadn't had enough development in myself to be strong enough to be able to, you know, I would have just been pulled back into it and I would end up back in a prison cell within no time, you know. So that was that's one of the best things I can say around environment, you know. So get yourself around people, you know. People let fear keep them in hell, even though, you know, like people think, oh, rich people are all like this, or they all the evil, and it's not that. It's literally people have the fear of the unknown, and so you have to learn how to manage fear. Fear can be good. Like if you've got fear, like if you're trying to get sober, you know, from alcohol, you know, it's probably a good fear to have of, like, you know, staying at your mate's house who's an alcoholic, you know, or same for crack, you know, like if you're trying to recover from crack, you wouldn't go live at a crack house. You need to get away from it. So that's good fear, to have fear around that sort of stuff. But bad fear is having fear around things that could actually transform your life. You know, you have to be able to lean into things. Like I'm constantly always, like I try and train fear now. Like I do things that are out of my comfort zone, which I risk, you know, like I remember starting this year I did a few things of conscious dance, you know, like I've never been able to dance, and it goes against my whole identity as this guy who's been, you know, like this tough guy, you know, and I remembered like driving to it, you know, and it was like this process was going through my head where I was making excuses, you know, and once I realised what it was, because I was always like, oh no, this isn't you, you're not this, you know, because I was scared, like I had fear around it, but like then I realised as soon as I could identify it as fear, then I had to go for it. You can't have courage without fear. And it takes courage, you know, like it takes extreme courage to be able to do something different or do something you've never done before. So, you know, the other side of it as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the improvement mindset now. So how do you improve on things? It's like, well, you have to understand that you, like, especially when you're down here, you could be going up that spiral, like all these little steps. You're still going to feel like shit while you're in the red. You know what I mean? But you don't see it. So you've got to like just understand to learn how to enjoy the process. People think that happiness is when they get to a destination. It's like happiness is learning how to enjoy the process. The process, and I'll show you a really easy way that works really well if you want to do something to help. When I first went into recovery, you know, it was completely all new to me, and I wanted to be able to like use the improvement mindset when it came to all the things I wanted to do. And I also wanted to set my week out, because at this same time I started to do a lot of gym stuff, and like I was trying to get myself, you know, mind, body and soul all in line. And what I did was so with the improvement mindset, it's about tracking what you're doing. So what I would do is I'll bring this up closer. So I would plan my week out. Doesn't take long. You know, I'd plan my week out, and then I'd have like a little like mark next to each activity. So it's like 6 out of 6. I did that 100% first day, and then as you notice, slowly throughout the week, you drop off a bit, you know, because you motivation Monday. But then what happens is then I've got, okay, well I hit my week with 66% accuracy. The following week, I do the exact same thing. Well, how do I hit my week? I hit my week with 84%. So I'm improving. It doesn't matter how much, because time works in your favor. Otherwise, if you don't learn how to use the improvement mindset, time works out of your favor. You know, week 3, I forgot to mark all my stuff down. That's okay. I just went again to week 4. Okay, so week 4, did all that, you know, like, so I've done things, okay, well, sick, that was week 4, you know, so I only hit the week at, like, I only hit it at 66% that week. And then, so this one, yeah, week 5, I hit the week at 95%. So it's like, as long as you're tracking yourself and you're going forward and you're taking steps forward, because you might not, people don't realise, it's like when you go to the gym, if you train at the gym a lot, you don't notice the day-by-day improvements, but then you bump into someone who sees you down the track and goes, holy, you're completely different to where you were before. And the best thing about, when you're doing things that are good for you, it's completely different to, there's 2 types of dopamine. You've got good dopamine and bad dopamine. Bad dopamine is just scrolling on social media all day. It depletes you. It's almost like you've got a phone battery of dopamine. So when you're doing things that don't actually, aren't good for you, it just depletes, and then you have no energy and you're wondering why you can't do anything, and then you're just feeling sad for yourself. But good dopamine is the dopamine that's released after you've done a task. So if you go to the gym, it's like, it's not about, you know, like it hurts while you're doing it, but then that feeling afterwards, you're getting dopamine, you're getting all these like chemicals released in your brain afterwards that gives you that really good feeling. It's like, wow, that feels really good. You know, anyone that, you know, everyone that knows when you go train, all that sort of stuff. But this applies to everything. It's like if you do some studying and that's what you wanted to do, it's like at the time you might be hating on it, but afterwards it's like, okay, you feel good because you did the task. It's almost like by achieving those little tasks. And even with the improvement mindset, so you can track things. So for example, in here, you can, if you get a notepad here, you know, even like you can track, so let's just say you want to study, you want to learn something new, you know, and all you can do is you can either, there's 2 ways to do it. If you're reading books, you want to learn how to read a book, because everything, you know, books are the best. You know, someone could learn something their whole life and you can absorb that in a whole week. You know what I mean? Like if you take into a whole book, you know, and it's really, I really love reading. Like that was one of the best things I got from prison, was learning how to read. Well, like learning the value of reading, you know. But let's just say you want to like pick that habit up. At first, because it's a new habit, it's going to be very difficult. So if you track it, you know, you can even set up a thing like how I showed you before. But then you can even go, okay, well, I could read for 13 minutes today. So tomorrow, if you read for 14 minutes, you'll get a release of dopamine because you beat the goal. Too many people, they give up because of the fact they think that happiness is when they get to the destination. It's like the best example of this is Tyson Fury. You see how he had that huge thing where his whole life he'd wanted to be the heavyweight world champion, and he crashed into a super deep depression afterwards because he didn't think about what happens after. But if you learn how to love the process, and you learn how to enjoy the rewards from the little goals, you know, and that can be just hitting the day right and feeling content and going to bed at the end of the day going, I did better today. Then you start to feel better. You start to feel happy. You start to move up the spiral, you know, because you're improving, and that's the most important thing. And the thing is, it's like what motivates people at the bottom is completely different at the top. So when I was down here, everything was always about, well, what's in it for me? Like how, you know what I mean? Like even if I'm doing good things for other people, I'm always thinking, well, then now people will like me. You know, if I get this, if I, you know, it's almost like if I buy a nice car, if I have this, or, you know, you see this a lot on social media, and it's almost like you want that validation to feel worthiness, but that no one else owns that power, because the problem with that is it's a short-term fix. It's like, okay, well, I've got all this recognition today, but then you feel empty afterwards, and then you're chasing it again. And then it gets to the point where people are just, you know, like you see it a lot where you got grown men that are doing like videos that are like, you know, they're funny and stuff, but it's like, you know, it's like it's all about just wanting to get that attention and validation, and it's like it's not actually doing what you're meant to be doing, you know. And then where real contentment happens is there's a certain point when you keep going up this spiral, there's a point when it no longer is about you. It's about how can I bring other people up? How can I help other people? And that's where I'm at now. It's like, well, I know how to do shit. So for me, the next challenge is to keep me going upwards. Is how do I help other people get what I've gained throughout this process? You know, and hang on before I get back. Another important thing is to think about who you want to become. Like, think about the person that you want to become. Like, one of the most difficult things that I had to do was when I realised that I had to go into recovery and address my stuff, because I got to a tipping point, you know, like when I was doing FIFO, I used to be able to justify my behaviour because I used to compare myself to who I was before. And I'd be like, oh, you know, I was really bad back when I was out doing crime and all the rest. So, and I used to think that because I was flying away, I could pay my bills and all the rest of it. It's called the golden handcuffs, you know. So it stuck me in that cycle for ages. But I came to a head when I became a lecturer. You know, like I had to go into recovery to be able to address that, because I'm like, well, if I, you know, like how can I be the person I want to become? And you have to think about that. You have to think about, who do you want to become? Like, what's the who do you want to become? And for most people, it's not about adding more things on. It's about taking things away, you know, and that's the main thing. You know, it's like when it comes to, you know, for myself, and it was like addressing substances. You know, I thought, you know, for my whole life, that was how I dealt with stress, and now it's not. And it's the best thing I ever did, because when I hit a year sober, which was nearly a year ago, like I remember I had this moment where I'm like, that would have always been the goal. And once I did it, it's like, there's no way that I want to go back, because I'd learned so much along the process that my mind had changed about how I viewed things prior to even starting it. What's the other thing? Yeah, so like, you know, thinking about who you want to become, and mentors as well. Last one, you know. So with mentors, it's like, find someone, you know, who can help you, inspire you, and try and think about how that person might think. And if you're lucky enough, you can try and put yourself in situations where you can find good mentors. You know, if you're in a family environment and it's like there's no one in your environment who can, you know, like who you actually want to, like, you know, who you can look up to or want to be like, look outside of it. You know, for me, for many years, I was YouTube. I went into YouTube. I followed, like, I listened to guys like Jordan Peterson. Like, I listened to all that stuff, and I used to do it first thing in the morning, so that my head was just like in that good, like it would get me on that upward spiral. Whenever you listen to things that are positive, when you listen to things that are good for improvement, like when you get into that whole improvement mindset, you feel, it makes you feel good inside. It's good for your soul. And there's other practices I do for my soul as well now. Like, it's like, you go to sound healing, you do spiritual practices, and it's like getting out of your comfort zone. But, you know, like some of those things, like even meditation and stuff, like these are all things that help you, you know, quieten the mind and, you know, give you peace, serenity, because that's where peace is. That's where, like, all the things that people want. Even when people think, oh, I want to buy, like, you know, even guys in prison, right? Everyone, like, well, why do people want to go bring heaps of drugs in? Because they want to get the big flash house, the big car. But if you break it down, it's like, why do they want that? Because of how it makes them feel. They want to feel like everyone's admiring them, because you remember, like, when you're living in this sort of area, it's like, it's external things that you think make you happy. When you're up here, it's like you don't really care about external things, you know. Like, to give an example, it's like, in order for me to go for my business, I went from being a welder in rails on like over 180 grand a year. I had to halve my money to become a lecturer, you know, at TAFE, because I needed to be able to show that I was someone who could be responsible. And it's been difficult because I had debts and stuff. Like, I had other businesses that had failed, you know, but I didn't turn, like, one of the first one I did, like, it knocked me for 6 months, but then I realized that's part of the process. You got to learn how to accept failure to be able to keep growing. Otherwise, it'll just keep you stuck. But, you know, like even last week, I'll give an example. My best mate, I contacted him. I needed to get something from the shop, and I asked him for $4 so I could afterpay something at, what do you call it, at Spud Shed. You know what I mean? Like, that's how broke. But it's like, for me, it's like, because I understand that it's not about money. Otherwise, I'd just go back to work, you know. And even with what I'm trying to do, it's like people go, oh, why don't you do it? Like, it's like, well, if I don't do it properly, I'm not following my purpose. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to transform lives, and I can't do that, even though it's going to be more difficult and it's going to take longer. That's fine, you know. But anyway, I hope there's some tips and values out of the video I did today. I'll keep always putting content out. I've got obviously some strong views on how to, like, transform that whole community development space. So I'm going to release a video on that, as well as you know, if there's any questions, you can always just reach out or even leave a comment. I'll answer it to the best of my ability. You know, but just remember, whatever whatever area you're struggling with, there's like hundreds of books probably on it. So if you want to know how to get better at something. And another good thing to do as well is always take ownership. You know, like if you've been fired from 5 jobs because the same thing keeps happening, and you know, like if something happens, like maybe once it's them, but if it's the same pattern keeps happening, then you're the common denominator. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, but don't you need to beat yourself up about that? It's great, because as soon as you realise that it's you that can change it, then you can actually do something about it. And then you can go, okay, well, what do I do? Look for things to find, you know, read up, Google, send me an inbox if you want, and I can point you in the right direction depending on what the question is and how you want to be able to handle it. But anyway, I hope you got some value. Yeah, thanks. Have a good day.